Story 1. My daughter was conceived at work on airport property in the back of a Ford Focus while we were waiting for a medical flight to land. She knows nothing about this but tells me she wants to be a pilot when she grows up. Story 2. Whoa, some of these got really deep. I'm over here like, my kids don't know where I stash my gummy bears. Story 3. I am the child of a parent who hid something horrible until I was 27. One day, during a domestic dispute between my parents, my dad called me to get back at my mom. He said, "Do you want to know something about your mother? She slept with over 30 men during our first 2 years of marriage." I sat down and started stuttering. He said, "You know how people have always said you look different from the rest of the kids?" I said, "Yeah, that's because I'm not your dad. Your mom slept with my best friend and you were conceived. Another thing, your brother, the one just younger than me, was fathered by my brother." My mom cried in the background without denying it. I laughed and then I went into 2 years of therapy. Story 4. My daughter cannot have a relationship with her grandfather because he is a pedophile and I would never trust him. The rest of my family maintains a relationship with him and pressures me to reopen communication because family comes first. They insist family comes first, which is why my daughter will never have a relationship with him. He has sexually abused multiple members of my family, and I only found out when I was pregnant with my daughter. Without going into too much detail, he also has a mental illness, and I have been told I need to let him have a relationship with my daughter because he is sick and could not help it. Story 5. My dad cheated on my mother while she was going through cancer treatments. My mother asked for a divorce. He said, "Go and take the kids." Every Valentine's Day I received flowers that I thought were from my dad, and I would get so happy. My mom would smile, nod, and share the excitement with me. I would call him to thank him, but he never sent flowers. It was my mom all those years. The same thing happened with birthday cards and Christmas gifts. They were never from him. My mom put his name on them in similar handwriting and even wrote return addresses on the mail. My mom was a superhero as a single parent. Story 6. It was a secret until recently, when my mother told me. When my parents divorced, things were very messy, and my father did horrible things to avoid paying for my care. He ended up owing my mother a couple of $1,000s, and she was ready to sue. Instead of involving lawyers, and because she knew my father was not a healthy person to be in my life, she offered him a deal. Keep the money, but officially relinquish custody. I would still be able to see him if and when I wanted, but he would give up all legal guardianship. Because he hated paying my mother that much, he chose $2,000 instead of me. It is not life-changing or earth-shattering, but it is revealing that my father values money more than me. Before anyone judges my mother, my father was, and probably still is, a terrible person who abused me and allowed me to be abused a few years later. I fully support my mother's decision. She is my favorite person, and I feel lucky every day to have her in my life. Story 7. My father found out in his 40s that the man he had always thought was his father was not his biological father. His mother, my grandmother, cheated on her husband with the milkman. Story 8. I am an adoptive parent of 3 children, 2 of whom are biological siblings and also cousins. I found out a year after the adoption that the biological parents were half-siblings who shared the same father. The biological parents discovered this after they had the first child and proceeded to have another. The children are now 16 and 13, respectively, and are unaware that they are products of incest. Unfortunately, their biological grandfather has just passed away, so there could well be a significant revelation in the near future. Story 9. I have been changing every clock in the house 3 hours ahead on New Year's Eve. At 9 p.m., we celebrate the new year, then hang out for an hour. He thinks he is breaking every rule and has a great time. Now that he is turning 11, has a phone, and is somewhat smarter, this will never happen again. Laughing out loud. Story 10. I was the child in the scenario. When I was about 12, my father died of leukemia. He had not been around much, so I did not see him often. I remember the day he left us. We woke one morning to find a pile of new toys on the living room floor and a note for my mother. He began coming around after he received his prognosis, and we developed something resembling a positive relationship before he died. When he passed, it destroyed me. I remember the funeral. I had to be dragged out of the car because I did not want to go. In his will, he left me his car, a Camaro, which I was supposed to get when I turned 16. His parents fought to keep it. They were terrible people, the whole side of his family, so we eventually told them to keep it. About 15 years later, I learned the man who died was not actually my father. He was my brother's father. My real biological father had been living in the next town, 20 minutes from my house, my entire life. My entire family knew about it except me. That was why his parents fought to keep the car. They knew I was not his son. I still do not know whether he knew, but I assume he did. My maternal grandmother met my biological father several times during my life. My mother said she never thought it was worth digging up and intended that I never find out. I have never spoken to him. I know his name and an approximate location from about 10 years ago. Beyond that, I know nothing. My grandmother said she would help me contact him if I ever wanted to meet him. I do not know whether I ever will. After thinking more about it, I am convinced the man who died knew I was not his child. For clarification, I am not married. Story 11. Posting this so that when my children are old enough to snoop, they get a brief moment of excited expectation before they find a note from me saying I truly enjoy being with their mother. Story 12. I am hiding a lot of things. I used to be a stripper for 10 years. I grew up in an abusive household, partied hard, and was part of the New York City and Montreal club scenes. I was kidnapped and taken to another country. Now I am just a boring accountant and a mom to everyone. No one has any idea what I have been through. It is surprising what your children do not know about you. Story 13. I'm the kid. Until I was 12, I thought I knew my biological father. He left when I was around 6 and my mother started dating the man I call and accept as my dad. I thought people left and you moved on. On the way to cheerleading practice when I was 12, my grandmother said, "You know Steve isn't your real dad?" I said, "No." And that was it. I found out about 4 years later that my mother was having an affair with my biological father. One night, she was brutally beaten and raped. She called my biological father from the hospital and he said he was on his way. She never heard from him again. I am 30. She suspects that he arranged the rape. When I was 18, I received a message on Facebook that started, "You don't know me, but I know you. Don't delete this." It sounded like one of those chain letters. It turned out to be my half-sister from my biological father. She and I are now Facebook friends but haven't met in person. I have no desire to meet my biological father. The man who raised me is literally amazing. I could not have custom ordered a better father. My mother left him when I was 16 after cheating on him with a woman. He sat me down and told me that just because he and my mother broke up doesn't mean that he and I did. He continued to financially support me and never missed a beat. He met his wife 10 years ago and stepped in as dad to her then 5-year-old. He is so badass. Story 14. I am the child. I recently learned about the murder-suicide attempt my great-grandmother carried out against her family. Her daughter, my grandmother, survived the attack and, some years later, moved to Canada as a teenager, eventually married, and had my father. It is haunting. Story 15. My son was the product of rape. He just thinks I once had very low standards for men. Story 16. After reading a bunch of these, I feel pretty sure that my most shameful secret is that I eat most of their Halloween, Easter, and parade candy when they are at school. Story 17. My parents told me my sister is adopted. They did not tell her. She is 34 years old. By the way, help. What do I do? Story 18. I am a 48-year-old woman. Throughout my childhood, my father told me my mother was dead, and everyone in the family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and stepmother, supported the lie. It was not because my mother used drugs, was abusive, was a criminal, or was a bad person. It was simply because they had a huge argument one night and she went to stay with a friend without me. My father decided she would never be allowed to be in my life again, and he wrote her off. On my 18th birthday, she called our house and asked to speak to me. That is when I learned the truth. Story 19. My mother died 15 years ago. My family left many of her belongings for me. About 10 years ago, while I was trying to downsize, I found medical documents she had kept. Apparently, I was not an only child. She had been pregnant with twins, and I was the one who survived. Story 20. My son's older half-sister molested him, and that is why we do not see them anymore. We are waiting until we can get in to see a mental health professional for support before we tell him. He was 3 when it happened and was able to tell us quite graphically what was happening. The sister also admitted it and said she did it because it was funny and she liked to hurt him. Child Protective Services became involved and investigated both families but could not find anything suspicious. We are telling him because we strongly believe it is the right thing to do. We do not know what or how much he remembers and would much prefer to give him coping skills now instead of possibly letting him disintegrate into a non-functioning adult with massive problems. Thank you so much for all the support. It is a horrible thing to deal with, but we are going to do everything in our power to love and support him. I am so sorry that so many of you had to go through similar situations. I am proud of every one of you for surviving and fighting. Story 21. A colleague of mine has a friend who hid from her 8-year-old daughter that the child would die within a few years from a terminal illness. Story 22. The reason we do not talk to Uncle Jimmy is that he molested 8 students while he was a teacher for 20 years, went to jail, and is now treated as if he were a leper in our city. Story 23. My wife and I each have a child from a previous marriage. Both of our ex-spouses were abusive and unfaithful. Our children still adore and idolize their other parent, and we simply smile and nod. This probably is not the type of thing the original poster was asking about, but it is a secret that we will maintain for years. Editor's note. Thank you, everyone, for the replies and stories of commiseration. It makes us feel better to know we are not the only ones keeping things like this a secret. Story 24. I am working out how to explain that the chickens we eat are the same as the chickens that live on a farm. Story 25. Before I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I took a large number of pills. I think it was the closest I have ever come to suicide. I had always dealt with anxiety and depression, and the extra hormones pushed me over the edge. I learned about a week later that I was pregnant. I was terrified throughout the pregnancy that something would be wrong with him. Fortunately, he was completely healthy and is a very smart child. I have never told anyone, and I feel very guilty. Story 26. My wife is not the biological mother of our twins. We used in vitro fertilization and the eggs came from a donor in a South American country. My wife carried the twins and gave birth to them, but she has no biological relation. We will tell them someday when they are older. It is a little strange. One child looks exactly like me at that age, and the other looks very much like my brother. I did not expect this to receive so much attention. Thank you to everyone for the advice about when to tell our twins. Comments from people in similar situations and explanations about the biology were especially helpful and educational. For anyone wondering, our twins are 8.5 years old. My side of the family has known the truth long before the procedure. For some reason, my wife told her family that she was the egg donor, I was the sperm donor, and that we used in vitro fertilization because we were older and needed medical help to get her pregnant. I never understood why, but I went along with it because it was what she wanted. I will broach the subject when my wife returns to the country from a long work trip. Thanks again to everyone for helping me see the impact of waiting too long to tell our children the truth. Story 27. Not a parent, but a child. Last Christmas I found out that my mom had previously been married and divorced, and that my dad had a child before he married my mom. So I have a half-brother or half-sister whom I have never met. The real kicker was that I learned this from my new sister-in-law. She had someone do some digging, discovered it, assumed I already knew, and brought it up out of the blue on Christmas Eve while we were baking cookies. Story 28. My daughter knows that her grandparents are getting a divorce. She does not know that it is because my father-in-law, age 72, impregnated a 23-year-old. We will talk about it once she is older, but I do not want to normalize that relationship for a pre-adolescent. My father-in-law is not wealthy. He is in fairly good shape for someone drawing Social Security, and I am not aware of his private life. It is a small-town situation involving a troubled single mother, and an older man who has not experienced much emotional growth since being drafted for service in Vietnam. They would not end up together if they were emotionally healthy and did not have control issues. I will do my best to explain this to my daughter, but she is 9 and already emotionally overwhelmed by the idea of divorce. When she comes to me to talk about it after processing the situation, I will explain more fully. My husband has already told his father that our family and his new family will not be getting together for a barbecue in the foreseeable future. Many readers are making assumptions about the 23-year-old. Remember, this is a small-town situation with family issues in a rural area. Do not be optimistic about this relationship. Story 29. When I was a teenager, I learned that when my mother had me, my father did not believe I was his child. He even demanded a paternity test so he would not have to pay child support because he believed my mother had cheated on him during a business trip. I do not know why, but a paternity test was never done, or maybe it was and I have never been told. This explained why I felt so distant from my father for the first 10 years of my life. He always favored my older sister when I was younger and called her Daddy's little girl. I felt like he hated me, and this explained why. Today he is the best father. I do not know if something shifted, but he and I are extremely close now and he loves me endlessly. He was especially supportive when I was suicidal in high school and had severe depression and anxiety. My mother has bipolar disorder, so I grew up in a toxic household, and he was the only one to pick me up and be there for me. I look a lot like my father. People even ask if my sister and I are twins. I think the paternity issue was just spite from an ugly divorce. Thank you so much, kind stranger, for the gold. I had no idea my comment would get so much attention. It felt small among other comments, but it is reassuring to know I am not alone and to hear other people's stories. Thank you all. Story 30. My son was planned, but after I separated from his father when he was 8 months old, and we had nowhere to go and no way to support ourselves, I often thought about dropping him off at the hospital and leaving town. I never did. He is 8 now and we are very happy. Story 31. I was a child, but my dad waited until I was grown to tell me that my mom had given me a lot of sleeping pills when I was small, so she could leave me alone at home to continue a relationship with her lover while my dad was working in another country. That explained many things. Thanks to everyone who wished me well. I really appreciate it. I am doing well, and it has not affected me except that I do not remember much of my childhood. I did not suffer. I have been dealing with depression and anxiety for a few years, but I am not sure if this is linked to the drugging. I have become rather good at coping with depression. Otherwise, my life is really good. I want to make it clear that I am on okay terms with my mom. She learned from her mistakes and I forgave her. I do not forgive her for how she treated my dad. My dad is the greatest person I have ever known, and he deserves to be happy. Story 32. This is not our family. They are friends of ours. The husband died late last year from kidney failure. The mother told her 4-year-old son that his father had gone overseas to work until he was 18. There is no outcome that is good for this child. Story 33. My dad told me my mom had vertigo, which is why she fell down a lot. It was not until I was 6 that I found out she was an alcoholic. Story 34. I am in poor health. My daughter is 2 years old and she just wants her mother to play. How do you explain cancer to a 2-year-old? Story 35. Grandpa is not their grandfather. I did not find out until I was 30 that my dad had adopted me and that my mom was married to someone else when I was born. My 15-year-old was looking at deoxyribonucleic acid kits in the store and said, "I wonder what surprises it would find." I thought, "Oh, more than you think, sweetie. I'll tell them someday, just not sure when the right time is." Then again, that is what my parents told me when I asked why they never told me about my biological father until he reached out and revealed their secret. Story 36. My adopted daughter was conceived as a result of a gang rape. Experts say you are supposed to give adopted children all of their history when they are old enough, but honestly, if it were me, I would rather not know. We are considering never telling her. It weighs heavy on our hearts. She is 15, almost 16. She knows she is adopted and is in contact with her birth mother. Her birth mother does not think she should know this history either. The compelling argument to tell her is this: it is not our right to decide if she knows her history. It is her history and her right to know both the good and the bad. Several people asked about my username. When my newly adopted daughter was 6 weeks old, I was changing her diaper and was not yet used to the unpleasantness. I gagged while trying to get through it. I had been through this several times before and thought it was just my body making a threat that would not follow through. As I finished the cleanup, a little squirt of liquid landed on my arm and pushed me over the edge. Not wanting to vomit on my child, I turned my head to the side and vomited toward the floor. One hand held two little legs and the other held the wipes, so I could not try to catch it. Mr. Meow was standing below. This happened soon after we adopted the daughter from this story, and I thought of that when choosing a username. Story 37. I don't actually enjoy watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. My 2-year-old would be devastated because that's our show. Story 38. I have a copy of Grand Theft Auto hidden behind some books on a shelf. Story 39. I am not the parent. I am the child. My family kept it a secret that my brother was a child molester and that my grandfather raped my mother and threatened to kill us, his grandchildren. I found out because I told my sister that my brother had molested me, and she told me the rest. We were raised to have a relationship with them as if they were normal human beings. It is absolutely disgusting. Story 40. I am a single father. His mother left when he was 2. I broke up with her and later found out she was pregnant. I begged her to have an abortion or to put the child up for adoption, but she refused. When he was born, I changed my mind. He stayed with me for at least 6 more years, whether he liked it or not. We ended up homeless and in a shelter when his mother left, but I have no regrets. Story 41. I do not have children, but here is a family secret. My mother and I left a hair straightener on for 2 days while we took a trip to Canada. It does not have an automatic shutoff. We have not told my father. Update. The house was fine. The countertop was just very hot. This happened about 2 years ago. Story 42. How abusive their biological father was to me, how neglectful he was of our eldest yet emotionally dependent on her, that he never wanted a son, and that he had no interest in our second-born. My biggest fear is that they will see exactly what he did to me. They do not notice how my heart wants to leap out of my chest when there is a knock at the door. They think I will not let them play alone in the front yard because of cars passing. Not because I am terrified their biological father may find them and snatch them. They think I only dislike big crowds and rude people pushing and shoving, not because I am constantly on edge looking for that one face. They will never know that I once broke down to their school principal after seeing an ex's Facebook post, or that I used to be carefree and that hurts. My eldest, just shy of 8 years old, has started asking questions. One of her earliest memories is coming home to me in a police car because Daddy was too sick to take care of me, so the police brought me home. I will have to explain more soon enough. It has been 3.5 years since my children had any contact with him. Explaining the past terrifies me. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for the support. I have come a long way from the girl who endured that existence and now have an incredible life full of people who love and adore me. For anyone in a similar situation, know that you do not have to sacrifice your happiness for anyone else. You deserve better, and better is out there. It is never going to be an instant fix. Some scars last forever, but there is help for you. All you have to do is reach for it. Finding your self-worth can be a humbling but amazing experience. You are important. You are strong. You are not alone. Story 43. We hit the lottery for $12.5 million and nobody in our family, including our children, has any idea. Other than us and the government, the only people who know are an attorney we hired to keep our identities private and an accountant. We have kept our lives pretty normal. We both work, so it appears there is income coming in. We both enjoy what we do and did not want anything to change drastically. We did not want to ruin our relationships with anyone or spoil our children. The money is safely invested for their futures, but it will not be used until they have established themselves on their own and do not know there is a safety net. We support numerous charities. It is a blessing to win and a greater blessing not to be destroyed by money. Obviously, this is not my real name, which would defeat the whole purpose. Story 44. The baby brother she keeps asking for has caused so much heartbreak. I had a miscarriage, and every time she asks when she is getting a baby brother, I feel like I have been kicked in the gut. I did not expect so many replies. I decided to keep this from my daughter because she does not need the heartbreak to change her little world. She is 6 years old. I know she would be able to understand what happened, but I would rather she stay oblivious and happy than grieve a baby she did not know about. I might tell her when she is an adult, but I also do not want her to be upset about how her innocent question makes me feel. Thank you for the messages of support. Losing a baby is a very lonely grief, even with the support of a partner. I am sending love and virtual hugs to all who have been or are going through this. Even though we may feel like nobody could ever understand how we feel, we are not alone. Story 45. Money is tighter than I would like. My daughter's Easter gift this year is a brand new, expensive hair straightener that someone gave me in return for a favor. My son's Easter gift is a Lego set from my childhood because my mother kept most of our things in good condition in their original boxes. Some people do not like non-candy Easter gifts. That is fine. Everyone does their own thing. Story 46. After all the acid we took, we thought you kids would be flipper babies. Story 47. I'm the child, but my grandmother was so angry that my mother dated young and became pregnant that my mother lost her first 2 pregnancies because my grandmother had her brothers beat her until she miscarried. It hurts my heart. My grandmother's brothers were the abusers. My mom was an only child. It was communist Albania at the time. My grandmother is lovely now, and it is a shame that she was abusive to my mother during her adolescence. My mother, I believe, suffers from some form of bipolar disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the abuse, and she subsequently abused my brothers and me. It was like walking on eggshells my whole childhood. Anything I did wrong ended up with me being hit. One of my brothers was the worst to me. He would choke me for making him lag on Call of Duty. My parents were working all day to support us and never really intervened. Even when they noticed me self-harming and depressed, I was punished and beaten because my life, in comparison, was seen as nothing to complain about. It took me a year in therapy to come to terms with not devaluing my pain because my parents have been through worse. After some time, healing, and forgiveness, we are all okay with one another. I still avoid my brother a lot. My anxieties and post-traumatic stress disorder became a little too much for me to handle after living with them for 20 years, so I moved across the country. Despite everything my family has been through, time really did heal most wounds, and we all do love each other. There is more respect now than there has ever been. My mom had her first child at 16, the second at 18, and me at 21. She understandably feels like she lost most of her childhood being abused and then raising children. Also, stop telling me to hurt my grandmother. I understand my mother's story is painful, but they have a healthy relationship, they love each other, my mother is supporting my grandmother financially, and that happened about 30 years ago. My grandmother was an amazing guardian to me and often saved me from my mother's and brother's abuse. Story 48. My parents hid from me for over half my life that I had a twin sister who died at birth. Apparently, even at age 2 I knew I had a sister without anyone telling me. Throughout my childhood and early teens, I pretended that imaginary friends or real friends were my twin. A few years ago, my mother sat me down and told me the truth. I am an only child, which does not make me feel better. Story 49. My father has a second wife in a different country. I learned this from my brother who lives there, but my father does not know that my brother told me. My mother does not know about my father's second wife. I am not sure how this will play out in the future. I hope it does not. The screenwriter forgot to finish this part of my life. Thank you to everyone who has wished me good luck, encouraged me to act, or asked questions. Your questions feel like therapy to me at the moment. On June 4th, 2019, at 4:17 a.m., my mother knew. She started getting the news from my father on June 3rd, 2019, at 11:30 p.m. She has been screaming, asking questions, and demanding action. My mother is a wise, strong woman. This is the latest proof that most men are pigs. Peace. I pray for people to be truthful and honest with themselves and others. Random but not random thought. Clear and honest communication is the key to a beautiful life. Story 50. Probably not that bad. But here it is anyway. My ex tried to take him away from me. When he was around 2 years old, she tried to move him out of state. It turned into a huge custody battle and many subsequent fights. She wanted to take him despite my involvement. For a while afterward, he talked about them wanting to move, but they decided not to. I am sure I will tell him someday when he is older, but for now it all must be kept quiet. Story 51. Our daughters were both conceived through in vitro fertilization. The older daughter was conceived 2 years after the younger. The younger daughter was frozen for several years as an embryo, which makes the older daughter biologically younger than her sister. Story 52. My mom doesn't think I know, but I am 90% sure that her getting pregnant with me was an accident, and she did not believe in abortions. Then they had to get married. My dad was not happy with how I turned out. I am very light-skinned and he is black, so he accused her of cheating. He has told me he does not think I am his. He does this a lot. He has a whole other child in a different state whom he will not recognize. This puts stress on their marriage. My mom is a kind woman and wanted it to work out. She got pregnant again with my brother, who is darker but has wavy rather than curly hair. So how could he possibly be his? My dad became more and more abusive. My mom eventually could not take it. She told me a couple of years ago that she said we were going to school. But then she took a different route. She snuck us away from him and we went from hotel to hotel, so he could not find us or hurt her and me. He liked my brother, though. He signed the divorce papers and the restraining order was put in place. He ended up breaking into our house about 10 to 15 times afterward to leave presents for my brother and me, and he scared my mom and me. In summary, I know I was an accident, but my dad did not think I was actually his, so my mom had another baby to try to appease my dad's racism. Edit for clarity. I was ranting. Story 53. We are very poor. The children are small, so they do not notice, but we struggle to pay rent and buy groceries. To commenters who grew up poor, thank you for your stories. It is nice to know that many of you were well into adulthood before realizing you had been poor, and I love that you have happy memories even when you had no money and the electricity was shut off. A bit of background. We had our children relatively young and were both in graduate school. We are in a strange position because we both have fancy-sounding degrees that people would assume led to well-paying jobs. I am now a postdoctoral researcher, and we are notoriously underpaid. Sometimes I think that, having a Doctor of Philosophy degree, I should be smart enough to figure out how to get more money, but I moved the family internationally for this job, which is another reason people might think we have everything sorted out. Regarding offers of help, I have always had difficulty asking for and accepting help, and now is no exception. Thank you for your kind offers. They mean a lot. I will talk to my husband and may take you up on one. Story 54. My future son will never know I have a secret stash of video games locked away from his sticky, break everything fingers. Go play with your tablet, encased in 15 pounds of foam. Edit. Thanks for the silver. I truly spend more time than I should thinking about the logistics of this. Story 55. My second cousins are technically twins 2 years apart. Their parents underwent in vitro fertilization and 2 of the eggs were fertilized. They were not ready for twins, so they froze one of the embryos and had their second child 2 years later. It is actually pretty cool. I was not very familiar with in vitro fertilization when this happened, and many people say they are not twins. It does not really matter to me whether they are or not. I just thought it was cool when I was a child. I was about 9 when the oldest was born. For anyone wondering, they are a boy and a girl. Story 56. We are divorced. Years before they came along, my spouse and I decided our marriage was not working and divorced. Years later, things still were not working for either of us, so we got back together. We never got around to getting remarried, though. Story 57. From a child. I grew up with horrible nightmares and sleep paralysis from a young age. I never understood why until I found out and read the reports. My mother sold me to men for as little as $15 an hour when I was 2 and a half for drug money. She would drop me at my great-grandparents with no food, no money, and bleeding genitals. I am 18 now, and the nightmares have not ended. My mother and I hate each other. She says if I had not been born, everything would be better. I was born 13 weeks premature, and now I am finding out that I may be unable to have children. It breaks my heart. I am so grateful to my grandparents for raising me, but sometimes I wish I had died back then. The countless appointments to doctors and gynecologists, the trauma and triggers, the body reminders. It really sucks. Story 58. My 3-year-old is an absolute miracle. Her birth mother, my wife's sister, did not want her and essentially tried to induce a miscarriage through heavy drinking and drug use. She was born 11 weeks premature with 5 different drugs in her system. By most medical estimates, she should not have survived. Yet here she is. She has slight developmental setbacks but falls well within the normal range. Her socialization is excellent, and she should start school on time. She will likely learn she is adopted fairly early, but not the dire circumstances of her gestation and surprisingly viable birth until her teens. All she will know is that her biological mother was not ready to give her the life she deserved and that we were. Genes do not make a family. Love does. She also has an older sibling, too old to be mine, so the idea of a loving non-biological parent will not be unfamiliar. My wife's sister is not involved in our daughter's life, but has been clean and doing well for a long time. Story 59. My dad killed himself and I found his body. They have an amazing life, and I do not want them to dwell on the fact that something so dark could happen to someone so close to them. They are 8 and 11 years old, and I have no plans to tell them until their 20s. When they ask, I say he was very sick. If they press for details, I say, I would rather not talk about it. Maybe when you are older. Story 60. My 8-year-old daughter is not biologically mine. I met her mother, my wife, when she was 3 months pregnant. Neither of us knew until about a month or 2 into dating. I knew she was the one. When she told me, she gave me the option to leave. She did not want me to stay only for the benefits of dating a pregnant woman and then walk away. I chose to stay. Best decision I ever made. Now we have our daughter and a 3-year-old son. I do not plan to volunteer the information to her, but I will tell her if she asks when she is older. The biological father moved to Colorado and cut off contact when he found out. Fine by me. As far as everyone, including the government, knows, I am her father. It is on the birth certificate. I was there for the entire pregnancy, the birth, and every day since. I was 22 at the time. Thank you for the award. I did not share this for karma, but I appreciate it. I hope more people can have the opportunity one had. Story 61. Kind of the opposite. On my 18th birthday, my father walked into my room carrying a bag of marijuana and a bunch of rolling papers. He showed me the hidden portion of our house that was not on the blueprints and was accessed through a hidden door, which he used to grow marijuana. By that point, I had been grounded several times for smoking. This happened in Florida in the 1990s. Story 62. I took a deoxyribonucleic acid test and found out why my father disowned me but not my 2 siblings. I have not told my mother yet. Laughing out loud. Story 63. This is not my secret and not really messed up, but my grandmother revealed on her deathbed to my mother and to my father, her supposedly firstborn son, that while in nursing school in the 1950s in another state she had conceived a child out of wedlock and given her up for adoption. Not even my very religious grandpa knew. She wanted not to take that information to her grave, so she told my parents. A few years later, the half-aunt got in touch with my father to ask about my grandmother's medical history and other reasonable details. Since then, almost the entire family has known about it, with my father jokingly referring to my aunts and uncles as his full brothers and sisters. I have an unusual family. Story 64. I don't want my son to know he was an unwanted accident. Even during my pregnancy, I did not want a child. I was still young and had my whole career ahead of me. I wanted to travel the world, finish school, and advance myself in life. After he was born, I had a hard time adjusting, and it took me a long time to fall in love with motherhood. I did not feel a connection to my son, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. Now I can't stop looking at him, hugging him, or crying over him. I am finishing school and I was promoted at my job. I can have my life and still be a mother. My only regret is that I once felt I did not want my son, because he means so much to me, and there are no words to describe the deep love I feel for him. Thank you to everyone for your words of support and for sharing your stories. I cried as I read them, and I am truly appreciative. I love my son so much that I cannot wait to get home and hug him. I love watching him grow, and I want to provide the best life possible for him. It is hard to manage work, family, and home life. I am not perfect, but I am doing my best. Thank you again. If any other parents want to talk, please do not hesitate to contact me. As to why I did not choose abortion, before he was conceived, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome and had a slim chance of getting pregnant because of the state of my ovaries. I wanted a child, but not at that moment. We were not mentally ready for a child. When we found out I was pregnant, we considered abortion. I was scared of everything. Carrying the baby, giving birth, having an abortion, the guilt, the regret. Many emotions and a lot of thought went into my decision. I decided to go through with the pregnancy. It was my choice and I do not regret it. I had friends and family supporting me during and after the pregnancy. A friend later admitted she had felt the same way I did after giving birth. I grew up knowing my mother did not want me. I was reminded of it almost every day and it seriously affected me. I do not want the same for my son. He is wanted. Story 65. My wife's parents are abusive and cruel. She was emancipated from them at age 11. They still try to insert themselves into our lives. Recently, my mother-in-law told people we had been in a terrible car accident, which was not true. Our children now believe their grandparents are dead. Story 66. I eat ice cream after my kids go to bed because I don't want to get it for them or clean up afterward. Story 67. I have one infant daughter. My wife and I are going to do our damn best to make sure she does not know that her uncle, my brother-in-law, molested my wife and her younger sister when they were about 8 or 9 and he was 14. Persisted for a few years. When it all came out, my narcissistic father-in-law did everything possible to cover it up from other family members and let life go on as normal. Years later, he dismissed it, saying my wife and her sister were lying and had made the whole thing up. He is now developing dementia, and I am pretty sure he actually believes it is all made up. Needless to say, my daughter will not be going near her uncle at all. I do not care if she never sees him for the rest of her life. Lately, my father-in-law has become even worse, and I am almost to the point where I do not want her to see him either. This is all very messed up. Story 68. I dislike their father. Sometimes he is tolerable, but overall he is not. Story 69. My mother hid the existence of a whole extra child from us for the first decade of my life. When you are the oldest child and you wish for a big sister but know it is not going to happen, it might still happen. Story 70. I am a surrogate parent for my 2 siblings. The hardest secret I have had to keep is that, while both of our parents are abusive, my father is the primary reason they are so damaged. He is extremely sneaky and manipulative. He has cheated on my mother for years with other women, gaslighting her into believing she is crazy. The children do not know. They think our father is an angel. Story 71. On the contrary, my stepdad does not realize that I know he is an alcoholic and that his mother has said horrible things about me. I have known since I was 13. Story 72. I'm a grandchild. We never told my grandpa that my mom had died. Instead, we said she was still in hospital. She had been in a car crash and was his favorite child. We were worried he would die if we told him. He passed away without knowing the truth. Story 73. It's not that bad, but we're just winging this parenting thing. Story 74. They know Dad works with money, but they don't know he works in the legal cannabis industry. Story 75. The sheer volume of bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism-related toys hidden in our bedroom is surprising. There is also a 50-50 chance our eldest was conceived in a fetish club. To be clear, I am a fetishist, more specifically a submissive and a masochist, not a swinger. Since meeting my husband, we have been sexually monogamous. although I have engaged in fetish play with other people at clubs and similar venues. Story 76. Our parents do not know, but when my parents split up, my mum took my brother and me back to Denmark from England. She began dating a woman who had 2 daughters with a man my mum had dated years earlier. My dad moved over not long after to be with his 2 sons. He ended up with my mum's former girlfriend and married her. They are still married today, about 25 years later. The only 2 parents who have not had sexual relations are my dad and my sister's father. We only know this because my stepmom gets a bit too honest when she is drunk. Story 77. You have reached a checkpoint. Reddit communities. Snacks, Rare Puppers, Party Parrot, Humans Bang Bros, Uplifting News, I Bleach. Edited. Thank you for the Internet Award. Please do not push this too far up. Otherwise, it is not a checkpoint. Love you all. Story 78. I was a child when my family kept my father's suicide a secret. I was 5 at the time. It messed me up because it affected most of my family relationships, which I did not understand. My father's entire side of the family stayed away, and my mother's brothers also avoided us because they were friends with him. My older brother acted out as he grew up. He knew about it from age 11 and could not talk to anyone except our mother, who was very bad at handling emotional problems at the time. My older sister also acted out when she found out. Both of their reactions strained my relationships with them because they could not tell me what was going on, so they avoided me. When I was about 16, my brother had a phone argument with my father's brother and blurted it out. That left me with trust issues ever since. Story 79. My husband is in the army and we live in South Korea. It costs $2,000 to ship our dog here. So we left our cat with my husband's parents because they love him and we knew they would take good care of him. I just learned this week, while my husband's siblings were visiting, that our cat had been eaten by a coyote months ago and my in-laws never told us. Apparently their neighbors heard a coyote killing something in the middle of the night, and the next morning they found orange fur and cat body parts in their yard. We have an almost 5-year-old daughter who loved that cat, and we have no idea how we are going to tell her. She recently drew a picture of him to show her friends in Korea and even today talked about him and how much she misses him. It feels awful not to tell her, but it will destroy her sensitive little heart. Story 80. I never actually took his nose. It stayed on his face the whole time. I told him I had taken it and even showed him the tip of my thumb as evidence. Sorry you had to read this, but it feels good to come clean. Thanks for the responses. I will tell him the truth eventually, but I must make sure Mom is on board. To those condemning me, your words weigh heavy. Honesty, like a fire at the circus, is intense. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.